What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shaped their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Dana Barnes, Senior Vice President of Palo Alto Networks, a team that delivers mission-critical cybersecurity solutions. Prior to joining Palo Alto Networks, Dana had several leadership roles at Microsoft and led operations for their national security group. He learned valuable lessons on the football field at the United States Naval Academy and as an artillery officer in the United States Marine Corps. I'm excited to learn from his 2 decades of experience in IT and business development.
Leadership is not just when you're in charge. Leadership is when you reach out first and try to connect and engage with your team, with your peers that are out there. So that's the other part of it, is you have to be willing to communicate, connect on a personal level, not just a professional level. When people know a little bit more about you outside of the office, they're much more comfortable working with you because you're creating a sense of community.
Dana, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Don. I'm really excited today. You've talked to so many great people, so this is an honor for me.
Well, today it gets even better. I love this, and I'm glad to have you. Our friendship and my knowledge of your working career has been enhanced by our research to get ready for today. I love asking this question, especially around people who appreciate athletics as you do. But when you think back to your childhood, do you have any recollection of the first time you were handed a ball, or you have, something where you might have an early memory of the importance of sports and the role it might one day play in your life?
I do. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother during the summers and the falls, and she lived in DC. And she would have students that went to Howard University live with her while they were going to school.
Oh, wow.
A couple of those students were on the Howard University soccer team. And I don't know if you know the history of the Howard University soccer team, but in the 70s, they won 2 national championships.
I did not know that.
And the players on that team, one of them lived with my grandmother. He would sit me on his motorcycle, put a soccer ball in my hand. That was kind of my first little bit of taste of athletics from someone who was a champion at that level. It's amazing.
Wow.
I played soccer in high school, and it was the most incredible experience for me. I actually was an all-district player and an all-academic team player in high school from soccer. That was my first real competitive experience, team sports.
So tell me about soccer and what drew you to it. Soccer is a unique sport in that you can play an awful long time and very little what appears to be action on the scoreboard, but you have to stay enormously focused because a single mistake, a single goal can mean everything.
It was a sport that took advantage of my strengths, which was I was fast and I was smaller in high school. I was a late bloomer, so I didn't get big until my senior year. So it was a sport that allowed me to be competitive even though I was small, and it allowed me to use my brain. So you start to think and process on the go because it's a fluid sport.
Very.
And those lessons have been very valuable to me, throughout life. The ability to read, react, try to be 2 or 3 steps ahead and plan. But you're right. If you turn off for 1 second, that could be it's over.
Right. Yeah. That is the one thing about essentially a low scoring sport, right? Is that the opportunity in basketball, you could be down multiple possessions in the last 30 seconds. And if you play it right, you can make your way back in. Soccer, much tougher. So you get to the Naval Academy and you choose to walk on. Tell me about that.
It's a really interesting story. So I went to the Naval Academy prep school before going to the academy, and I played basketball there. I walked onto the basketball team. You're noticing a theme here. I was a walk-on and everything. I probably would never have been able to play football to make that team at Navy if it wasn't for my experience playing basketball at Navy prep.
No kidding.
That one year, you graduate high school, and I actually went to Howard University for a year, so I had a gap in my athletics career. But then I went to Navy prep. That's basically a junior college years, playing junior college level athletics. It was probably the most challenging year of my life in so many ways. And basketball was the saving grace because I had never played high school basketball. I just walked on. And I remember Coach Marriott, who ended up coaching the Navy women's varsity, he took a chance on me and developed me over that year. And it was an amazing experience.
Isn't that cool? I mean, that's the fun part too in this has been kind of learning who are the people that became kind of role models in your life. And, man, do you ever reach back to Coach Marriott anywhere?
Yeah, I stay in touch with him. He's not coaching anymore. He did a stint as the head coach of the women's team at Navy. He was an assistant on the men's team for a while, and he's fantastic. I used to ping him when he'd lose. I'd say, hey, don't worry about it. You'll win the next one when he was coaching. But he's a fantastic, fantastic guy.
And when those people get caught up in your life, that's really, really powerful.
Yep. He actually kicked us out of the gym one day intentionally. We didn't realize it was intentional at the time. We used to do a drill where you have to do 120 layups in 2 minutes. Team, you're just throwing the ball back and forth, back and forth. He amped it up intentionally to a level that we could not achieve. And then he told us that we were horrible. They kicked us out of the gym. It was 5 minutes into practice. But what he was really doing, he knew that we needed a break, but he didn't want to say, I'm going to give you a break. So he kicked us out of the gym. And then we came back to practice the next day, and we thought, okay, he's going to run us to death because we were so bad the next day. But it was a regular practice. What it did was we came to that second practice after that focused because we were worried about the fact that we were horrible, but he actually orchestrated the whole thing.
Oh, that's the fun part, right? When you hear these coaches who do something wonderful and ingenious that way, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. When I got to the academy, I thought I'll just keep playing basketball. I was injured and didn't make the freshman basketball team. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to be a student. And my sophomore year, my roommates who were both football players came in and they're like, hey, you're tall, you're fast, and Coach Chomp is running this passing offense now, and all of our receivers are short. You need to come out this spring. And I said, no, I don't know if I'll make it. And they're like, well, we've seen you on the basketball court. We've seen you out running around. You need to come out and we'll set up a meeting. I went, I met with the receivers coach. He ran me through some drills separately, and he said, go up to the equipment manager and get your stuff.
Wow. So talk to me about that process.
There's something about being a part of a team, and football is unique in that, people don't realize that every player is critical.
Absolutely.
Whether they're on the scout team or the varsity. And at a place like the Naval Academy, where the team is really integrated into the student body, unlike probably the only other places are Air Force and Army where they're integrated in that fashion, it is a big, big deal. And it was great for me. I felt a part of something that I hadn't had that feeling since probably the high school soccer years of being a part of a collective body, really working towards something. But I had to earn it, and that was great too. Literally, Don, they put me out and said, okay, we want you to run a 40, and they timed me. They said, okay, stand here. And they threw footballs at me for 10 minutes. They had the big arm quarterback, and I have to stand there, and I'm catching these balls. And my technique's not great. It's all athleticism. It's not the train stuff that the guys do. But at the end of it, they say, okay, go play spring ball. We're going to see what you can do. And I made the squad. And that was, again, going back to self-validation, confidence, that boosted my belief tremendously.
Yeah. So in spring ball, they have all the players who coaches have invested their time in going out and seeking and recruiting, and then you're there in the walk-on role. I've experienced that. I understand it. And tell me, what was it like at the Naval Academy to walk on to a team where all those coaches had invested time in other players?
Well, I think the academy is a different place. It was definitely different when I was there. They had intramural tackle football at the Naval Academy when I was there, pads and everything. So it was a different time, but the midshipman bond is so tight. It's probably a little bit different in some ways, not better or worse, just different than other universities. But the guys that were on the field were also my classmates, my buddies.
Right.
And one of them was a DB. So I got to compete against him on a regular basis. It felt like a family to me. I mean, I was just happy to be there, to be candid, Don. And I enjoyed it. The coaches were phenomenal because what they were focused on, Don, was winning. They were focused on finding talent. Yes, they'd recruited players, but they said, hey, here's a kid working hard, athletic. Can we use him? It was kind of like going back to the 1930s or 20s when the coach would walk on campus and go, hey, you're a big kid, come here.
Right. And that's the beauty. One of the things I love about sports that I think translates so well as a business discussion is that, yes, some headhunter might have found you as a talent on our business team, but you know what? You still have to earn it. The guy who walked in and came through a temp agency and now is kicking your butt because he's out working you, guess who's going to get that next opportunity? Is a real meritocracy
Yes.
to sports that I love.
Yeah, you're spot on. And that's also the beauty of business. When you have great business organizations, it's all about the talent. At my house, we say the cream rises to the top. No matter how it got in the glass, it's going to rise to the top.
Oh, I love that. That's a good one. Cream rises. It doesn't matter how it got in the class. So tell me, when you were there, is there a moment or maybe a practice or game or something from your midshipman career that stands out and where you went, wow, I will never forget this moment?
Well, considering I was a walk-on, I didn't have a ton of what I would call quality game snaps. But there was a moment, and it happened in the spring game, my very first spring game. My parents never had a chance to see me play football except for in that one spring game. You're on the sideline, you're waiting to go, you're hoping coach is going to call your number, and he does. He says, Barnes, you go in. I run in, I get in a huddle, and the play is to me.
Oh, wow.
We're running a little hitch, and I'm excited. I know the ball's coming my way. I get up on the line. I look at the DB in front of me, and I do exactly what I was taught to do during spring ball. I drive them back. I break down. As I turn around, Don, the ball is on me so fast because this is game speed. So you've been doing practice. Yeah. Now it's a game, and everything's heightened, and it's my first experience. The ball is on me before I'm ready. It hits me. The DB hits me, and the ball goes up in the air. Now, this is a very simple type of thing. It's not a phenomenal play, but I turn my body and I still make the catch as I go down. I was on the blue team that day. It was blue gold. And I'm on that sideline where the blue guys are. I kid you not, Don, there are probably 25 guys standing over right where I catch that ball after hitting in the chest. And they're screaming and jumping up and down as if I had made a Randy Moss, one-handed grab. At that moment, my dad and my mother are seeing these guys cheering for me as if I'm the most amazing receiver in the world. And I'm on the ground thinking, wow, this is what it feels like to be a part of a team.
Wow.
This is incredible. And so it's not a major, this amazing moment. It wasn't an Army-Navy game. It was just a spring game, but it is the one moment that I never, ever will forget.
So what really stood out about the moment wasn't the catch. So the catch was extraordinary. It was the celebration of the catch, right?
Yep.
It was the teammates who were cheering you on, and the idea, obviously, that your parents get to see it. But now we grow into a leader in business, and obviously you recognize the value of celebration and the ability to celebrate each other. And how do you recreate that? How do you, as a business leader, help your teams learn to celebrate each other?
In business, we have so many people that are what I would call unheralded. We don't talk about them a lot. They're down there every day working their tails off. And there are moments, every great win, there is somebody who did something that is nondescript and very small, but was incredibly important. The lesson I learned from that catch was, can I find that person that was in that chain of events that did that one small thing? Mm-hmm. And can we celebrate that along with the great win? And that's how you build the camaraderie and the teamwork, but that's also how you get people to understand that every single moment and every single action is valuable.
Wow. Is there an example you might have from the business side where some win you were able to celebrate and throw a teammate on your shoulders, if you will?
Yeah, we had a great win at a company that I worked for, there was a gentleman who effectively worked night and day going back and forth to the customer. And all he was doing was relaying information. He wasn't selling, he wasn't building anything. He was just really focused on relaying information back and forth from the corporate perspective to the customer and their legal teams. It was a very intense negotiation, and he had to do this sometimes at 2, 3 in the morning. Like, this was with the government, and it was a very sensitive project. And when you think about it, relaying information, does that really, like, what do you, and yet, if he's not doing that one thing, we don't solve the federal government's problem, and we don't win a major contract. We celebrated this particular individual in front of all of his peers when we had a large gathering. At the company I was working for, they had these large sessions, and we gave him just a small crystal award. You would have thought that we had given him the Medal of Honor because it was the recognition, kind of like what I experienced where people are cheering you on. He had a room of 200 people clapping. Those moments are the special ones.
Oh, man. I have to tell you, I had the chance to write a book with a baseball player named David Ross, who was a backup catcher for most of his career. But what his story taught me is that, and the phrase we use in the book is, you can become invaluable without ever being most valuable. And that's exactly what you're talking about here. That was not the sexiest, most valuable position in the sales org at that time. But at the time you needed it, he was invaluable. I love that.
Yeah.
When at Navy, even as a walk-on, though, I mean, I think sometimes the best part about being in a role like that is you get a chance to spend maybe a little more time observing because you're not caught up in every play. You mentioned Coach Chomp earlier. What were some of the things you observed about his leadership style that impacted you?
Well, like most college football coaches that make it to that level, the D1 level, he was a good communicator. He knew how to assess talent, which was great. But I think the one thing that I learned by watching him that impacted me for the rest of my career was he let people who were very, very talented lead the way. My junior year, we had a defensive coordinator named Greg McMacken. You might know that name. He was considered a defensive savant. He was just a great defensive mind. And what I learned that season, watching how Coach Chomp handled him, he basically turned over that defensive operation lock, stock, and barrel to Coach McMacken. Our defense was our biggest strength that year. Players who were unknown the year before were, players of the week, national visibility because of the defense that he put into place. And what I watched was Coach Chomp didn't let his ego get in the way. This is a guy who was an offensive mind and everything else. He had control of everything, but he had the confidence to let Coach McMacken run that defense his way, and he didn't meddle. Success comes when you let the smart people who really know what they're doing go. And to tell you how good McMacken was, I think he benefited from the fact that Coach Chomp didn't interfere. He went on to coach at the University of Miami on those Erickson teams. He went to Seattle to coach for the Seattle Seahawks. So that type of growth, because you have a leader that allows you to make your own decisions.
To flourish, yeah.
That was a great lesson I took from Coach Chomp.
Oh, that's great. I read a profile of him in which Jim Tressel, who was the former Ohio State head coach, but when he was at Ohio State as the quarterbacks coach, Coach Chomp was the offensive coordinator. And he talked about Coach Chomp being so generous with his time and his teaching, like his willingness to embrace younger coaches and not feel threatened by those folks. It sounds much like what you're describing here.
Oh, definitely. I tried to leverage that particular lesson in my entire career. And I believe that I've been successful because I've allowed the folks who are talented to grow and to flourish. I've seen it impact my personal life because I coach youth sports, and I've seen so many coaches at the youth level who want to do everything their way themselves, and they don't leverage the talents of the coaches around them. And I've been able to do that and see teams flourish as well. It's a beautiful thing when you do it right.
So tell me, coaching youth sports, leading a team of tech executives, what are the corollaries? What are some things that you've learned? Well, I'm not going to try to compare some of those who I've met on your team to a sixth grade quarterback, but what are some of the things that you gain as even a youth coach that help make you better in the boardroom?
I will tell you, youth sports challenging because what you learn with some of the young folks is that because of today's society where everything is on YouTube and you can search for it and find it on Google and on Bing and these areas, the kids know a lot more than you think. And they don't have to listen to you as a coach. You have to earn their respect. Coaching youth sports has taught me that I'm not the know-it-all. A lot of those kids know a lot. So you take that to the business world of my teams. When I came to Palo Alto, I've got a team of seasoned professionals who've been working in cybersecurity for years. And I'm the one who's got to learn. So the listening lesson that I get from my kids that I coach in ice hockey, 100% I use the same thing in listening to my team because they're guiding me and driving. So my job is to shut up, listen, and learn, and then ensure that the environment that they have to work in is conducive for them to succeed. And it's the same with coaching youth sports.
That's so powerful. Listening is, I believe, it's one of the lost arts of leadership, is that ability. We all feel we have to fill airtime as opposed to listening to other people. It's an incredibly impactful way for you to grow as a leader, even while working with a bunch of ice hockey players, right?
Well, right now they're all at the age of 16, 17. I started with my youngest son when he was 5. So I've kind of seen the progression as you start to coach them as they get older and older. You learn new skills.
Yeah. When I look at the great rivalries in sports, obviously there are a lot of people out there who love to talk about Alabama, Auburn, or Duke, North Carolina. I think Army-Navy is the greatest rivalry of all, right? It's just it's the best. And you had the opportunity while you were there to experience a win over Army. The Naval Academy won that game in 91. What was it like to beat a great and worthy rival?
That game in 91 was my first taste of beating Army, my only taste from a football perspective of beating Army because we lost 3 years running after that.
I wasn't going to mention that, but that's good.
But it was an amazing feeling. At that time, I wasn't on the team, but my roommates were, and they were on the field. I will never forget when the gun went off and the game was over because we didn't expect to win that game. We rushed the field. I was down there. I was one of the first ones, hop over the wall. Mids are running down, and we were on the field. And I remember seeing one of my roommates, Daryl Wilson, who got in that game in the last final minutes and put a hit on one of the Army cadets. And that is his memory, Don. You ask him about that game, he will tell you that he laid a hit on a cadet, and it was the best hit he's ever had. So beating a rival is undescribable. When you do it, it's wonderful. But losing is also equally painful.
How important is it in both sports and in business to have an incredible rival, have someone against whom you are always essentially measuring yourself?
I think it's one of the most important things for a business to have, for an athlete to have, for a talented person to have. Look at Edison and Tesla. They were rivals and what they did. If you look at the business world, Microsoft and Apple, perhaps, those types of rivalries are critical because you have a bar and you're always trying to reach that bar. And then if your rival sees that you're there, they elevate that bar. So you're always trying to get better. Without a rival, there is a risk that you can kind of hit a plateau, and you always want to be striving for excellence. I look at USA Basketball, and you've taught me so much about USA Basketball. Why do we have the dream team? Well, because we plateaued, we were winning and winning, but the rest of the world decided to raise the bar, which forced us to raise the bar.
Right, exactly. That's so well put. It's a great biblical reference, right? Iron sharpens iron. We're better when we get that chance.
Right.
3 teammates of yours at Navy were drafted to play in the NFL. Really incredible, right? The most notable of those being offensive tackle Max Lane, who went on to play for the Patriots for many years. Now, one of the things that stood out was that Max obviously had great physical gifts, but he had a reputation as a great teammate. We referred earlier to that ability to celebrate others. How did you see one of the best players on the team exhibit high quality teammate attributes?
It's interesting because as a walk-on, if you're not on the first or second team, you don't get a lot of reps, but you watch a lot of reps. You see a lot of reps. What I saw from Max was, and this is why we're there, was a player that was always lifting his teammates up. I saw one who would do whatever it took for the team to win, he would do. So, yes, he was an offensive lineman, but you may not remember this, but he actually scored a touchdown as a running back because they decided, hey, Max, you're big and athletic. We're on the goal line. We want to put you in the package and hand you the ball. Some guys might say no to that because they're afraid of the spotlight, but he did whatever the coach asked him to do. But I think the biggest statement of his sense of teamwork and as a great teammate was when he left the academy. His classmates on that team, our class of 94, went off to surface warfare school up in Newport, Rhode Island. They're preparing to go into the Navy. He's off with the Patriots, getting ready for a season. He took the time to get with those guys while they were in training to, have a beer, have dinner. He didn't have to do that.
Yeah. You know that the premise of this podcast is that so many executives have played sports and that it has impacted the way they think and they lead and they manage themselves. I'd love your feedback on, do you agree with that premise that your opportunity to have participated and competed athletically has made you a better leader?
Well, for me personally, athletics were a huge part of my growth and development as a leader and as a team member, not just leadership, but being a part of a team. I learned about it, how to handle adversity. I learned how to persevere through sports. I learned how to set goals and work towards them. I learned how to set team goals and work towards them. And I learned how to set my personal goals at times aside for the greater good of the team, which is critical in business, right?
Right.
And that's key.
Yeah. As you're evaluating talent around you, do you ever take note of those who have had some athletic experience?
When it comes to the workplace, I do believe that people who have played sports have received the same lessons that I was talking about. There are people who have not played sports but have been on teams that are not athletic.
Right.
And have the same lessons. So I don't look for athletes, but I have found a large number of athletes in leadership positions. And I have found a large number of successful former athletes, either at the high school, college level, even professionals. I've worked with folks who were professional athletes and then their careers end and then they come into the corporate world. I have seen that many of them have success.
Yeah. Watching the intersection of those two things have been really incredible. You graduate from the Naval Academy and then you go into service as a young officer. Often you're asked to lead people older than you, people who might be more seasoned than you. Tell me about that experience and what you learned as a leader in that environment.
It goes back to something we already talked about: listening, trusting, and respecting. When you're I was in the Marine Corps, and you're a young second lieutenant, you show up, there are Marines there that have been in the Marine Corps for 20 years, and they know exactly how to do what they need to do, and you're in charge of them. The mistake one can make is to believe that because you're in a position of leadership that you know everything and that they have to listen to you. I was lucky enough to have some good non-commissioned officers reporting to me, and I will tell you that they probably taught me more and led me more than I was leading them. As a result, I was able to be successful. It is very humbling when you go 4 years in the Naval Academy and you've been told that you're America's most wonderful, amazing young man, which is true. Those young men and women are incredible. But when they show up to the Navy, Marine Corps, and the fleet, they have to adjust to, hey, you don't know everything. You need to listen. When you come into that role, you need to be curious. You need to ask questions and not be afraid to ask questions, even the ones that you may think are dumb. The other thing is connecting. Leadership is not just when you're in charge. Leadership is when you reach out first and try to connect and engage with your team, with your peers that are out there. So that's the other part of it, is you have to be willing to communicate, connect on a personal level, not just a professional level. When people know a little bit more about you outside of the office, they're much more comfortable working with you because you're creating a sense of community.
Yep. We talk about it a lot with sports. One of the beauties of sports, and this is the thing I think a lot of people miss, is that collectively you're gaining a shared experience, right? Which can be true in business as well, right? If we can learn to share experiences, those are the things. That's the bond, right? That's how the glue is set, is around those shared experiences.
Yes. And in fact, sports is a compact world where you have a lot of experiences in this kind of time frame season. Usually when you talk to athletes, they talk about a season. A season of 92 was just this amazing moment for me. Well, the business world is very similar. The season is called a fiscal year.
Yeah. And you have quarters.
Yes, and you have quarters. And many times people will talk about a specific fiscal year where they did some amazing things, whether it was growth, an account that was dormant, that was open, or maybe it was a solution that really changed the industry. But those moments that you share together, it's not just the end product, it's what you did to get there. The dinners that you had talking about what you needed to do next. Maybe it was a meeting that you had that everyone broke down and just started laughing because someone said something silly and it broke the ice in that one moment. To your point, those experiences, the collective experiences, they're very much the same, especially when you have the sense of teamwork built into your organization.
Yeah. Things you can talk about for many years. When you started your career on the professional side, post-military, you started at IBM, then you went to Microsoft, and now you're a senior vice president at Palo Alto. Amazing. Was there a challenge in the athletic side of your life, or one of those experiences there, that you've brought into a solution in your executive experience?
Yes. So this is a little embarrassing, Don, but I will tell you, I was a basketball player at the prep school, so I knew what athletic talent was. I knew what the levels of how an athlete can be. But when you get on the field at Navy and you don't even know how to put your football pants on because you've never done it before, so you're trying to figure that out. And then you get out in the field and you realize, hey, I'm out here with Division I level players. And I will tell you, Navy is not Alabama. We're not producing guys that are going, on a regular basis, although we did send Malcolm Perry to the NFL. He's doing quite well. But they're still Division I level athletes, which is an incredible level of athleticism. And they can compete with anyone, any team, any day. And I was out there having never played at that level. And there were some days during spring ball and during the season where I felt like I didn't belong. And then there were other days where I did amazing things and I thought, oh, I can do this. I can do this. It takes a level of perseverance to progress. And that experience, when I apply it to my business life, and I'm going to use, my Microsoft days and my Palo Alto days, there were times when you get a new job and you don't know everything that you need to know. You don't know if you belong. Are you talented enough? Yeah, I got in, but am I really talented enough to stay? And it requires perseverance and it requires work to get past your doubts and your fears and execute. Those lessons that I got from Navy football, they really did help me professionally in those moments as I was climbing the ladder.
It's funny, as I was listening to you talk about not having put football pants on previously, that old line, right? Well, they put their pants on the same way we do, unless we don't know how to put our pants on, right?
That's right.
Kind of changes the dynamic there. As I was digging in, as I mentioned, to get to know you better for today, I loved going through your LinkedIn profile and reading what many of your former teammates had to say about you. And one of them, Mark Taylor, talked about you being calm under pressure, that he had witnessed you in the Microsoft days being calm under pressure. How did that experience, either on the field or just being in the presence of others who were under great pressure, athletics creates that. How did that prepare you to be more calm under pressure?
The more you train and practice to get better, the more confident you are. And the more you understand that even when there are mistakes, good things can happen. It's something that the athletic field helps you with. And then you add on my time in the Marine Corps where it was all about preparation.
Absolutely.
And all about, hey, what do you do when things aren't going according to plan? That's the ultimate thing about sports and about the military, is that things are not always going to go according to plan. You asked me about soccer. Well, soccer is a continuous flowing game, as you know, and it's not going to go according to plan. You have to adjust on the fly. If you panic, if you let your fears get the best of you, you will not execute. It doesn't mean that you're not nervous. It doesn't mean that you're not worried. It just means that you have to overcome that and you have to execute on what you've been practicing or been trained to do. Business is the same way. Not everything goes according to plan in the business world. And I've been very nervous many times. But as a leader, what your folks want to know is, how are you going to respond when things don't go well? How is the boss going to react? Is he going to lose his cool and yell at us, or is he going to reassure us that we can go forward? Right.
Yeah.
And the best coaches in the world, and I've watched them and I've played for some, when things go bad, they know how to just get everybody calm, reset. Okay, now let's go forward.
Right.
Sports taught me that, and the Marine Corps taught me that.
Yeah. Great friend, General Bernard Banks from West Point, used to talk about this, the importance of preparation, but he always finished everything with, remember, the enemy gets a vote too. Right. So you can plan, and this is exactly the way it's going to go, but the enemy gets a vote too. And as long as you're aware, can it keep that as part of your frame of reference? It allows you to pivot and make the proper adjustment. You've had the chance to participate in teams, different sports, but there are many people in corporate organizations, we both have worked with them, who like to refer to their organization as a team, right? But truly just a collection of people who are all just working independently, but drawing a paycheck from the same place. How do you define team? What are the characteristics of a true team as you would experience it? And then how might someone that's not quite there building a team try to build some of those characteristics into their operation?
The first I would say is that they're all teams. There are good teams and bad teams.
Okay, I got it. You're right.
But when you're looking to define a team, especially a good team, the first thing you're looking for is there a common goal that they've all decided that they're going to work together to reach? And do we have buy-in across that team? That's really important. So a common goal is critical. The second thing that you're looking for is the environment. Is there an environment where each member of the team not only has an opportunity to contribute, but is encouraged to contribute, and they can actually be their true self? I hate to use that term because it's kind of a common term today, my true self, but can you be who you really are? If you're quirky, is it okay? Can you be quirky in that group? If you are analytical, is it okay to be analytical? Is everyone taking your strengths and leveraging it?
Yeah. Dana, thank you so much for your time today. The wisdom. I've just written all kinds of things all over my prep notes for you. But I know our listeners, and I know they'll grow from this conversation, but is there a final takeaway, something from your combined lives of sports and business that you might share as a takeaway from today?
For me, the biggest takeaway, and this is one I've worked with my sons on, both of them are athletes as well, is perseverance. You have to be willing in anything you do to persevere and take risks. If you don't try and try again and try again, you're probably not going to reach the goals that you set for yourself. And sports teaches young men and women that they need goals and they have to work to reach them. You have to try and try and try. Not everyone is lucky enough to succeed on the first attempt. Most of us are not, actually. There's a select few, they're very special, but the majority of us, to reach success, have to continue to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and try again. And sports teach you that.
I love it. Well, like those teammates during that practice at the Naval Academy, I'm standing on the sidelines cheering right now. I'm grateful. I appreciate the time, the energy, and the wisdom. Dana Barnes, you're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
I'd love Dana's story about his catch in the exhibition football game. Although it was only spring ball, his teammates cheered for him like it was the national championship. It is human nature to only celebrate the big wins. And that means the steps along the way are often forgotten or underappreciated. I challenge you to recognize and celebrate one of your teammates for something that they do that would normally go unnoticed. The power of recognition can go a long way. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man?
Great, sir. How are
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. As we enter the new year, we are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access of Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but through the new year, you can enroll for $49. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to get started. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.